Hello, and welcome to the podcast Senior Bitches, where I explore the super fun world of becoming and being a senior citizen. As a woman, aging out and everything fabulous that goes along with it. No more sex for us, no more fun, no more looking good. Just please follow the line to the left and quietly leave the building, especially if you're over 55 and up. So meet me, Mary Jo Eustace, your host, and I am an actively aging senior. I'm a best-selling author, an award-winning TV host, and apparently still very much alive. I mean, I have a pulse. Yet in some ways, my age, my number has been a source of embarrassment to me. I mean, what's that all about? So I'm examining that in this podcast. So I've been deep diving with a group of amazing women, and today is no exception. This woman literally jumps off the page. Her energy is infectious. She's beauty, brains, and a social conscious. She's killing it in the modeling industry. I believe it's 67 years old. It's an extraordinary example of perseverance and owning who she is. And I'm thrilled to have her on Senior Bitches today. Please welcome Hanya K. Did I get it right?
Yes,
did I get it right?
You did. Thank you so much. It's so great to be here. And I love the fact of how timely this conversation is. It's about time, frankly.
It's about time. It's about time. And I've been following you for a number of years, and you're such a wonderful example. I've been following you on Instagram.
Right.
And your Instagram is pure inspiration. It's just unbelievable. How long have you been doing it? How long have you been active on Instagram?
So I started an Instagram probably 5, 6, maybe 7 years ago, just, playing around, not understanding what Instagram was all about. Just, wanting to be part of whatever Instagram was. It wasn't until I started modeling just pre-COVID that I started to take social media a little more seriously. And frankly, it's only in the last year that I've started this idea and concept about building a brand. You know what I'm saying? For me, this was not part of my lingo or my life. I spent my life in development and real estate and raising a child. And so when I came to social media and modeling, this was all new to me. Although I did it when I was young, now I came back to it all these years later. So it's been a blast, I have to say. Exciting.
Yeah. It's a really interesting trajectory because you're a fellow Canadian. You emigrated from the Ukraine when you were 5 years old with your family.
No, I didn't. I'm born and raised in Toronto.
Born and raised in Toronto.
Yeah, my parents came from the Ukraine. So after the war. So I was raised in a Ukrainian household. It was that strong Ukrainian work ethic. Get an education and then go get married perhaps or not. There was no pressure. But, the idea of having a family was one that was there for sure.
Right. So hardworking family. So at about 17 or 18 years of age, you got this idea in your head that you wanted to go to Milan and become a model. Now, where did that come from? Where did the confidence come from? What was that inspiration for you at that age?
So, I was always really loving fashion. I was an extremely tall and an extremely thin young lady, and which meant that I had to sew my own clothes because in those days you couldn't just walk in somewhere and buy something. So with that sewing came that creativity, which is quite natural in my heart of hearts. So I started to get involved in fashion, making clothes, and I just naturally gravitated to it. Loved it. I loved the whole idea of fashion and modeling. And my father just, he had some rules. And one of them was to complete my education. So it wasn't until I completed my university degree, a very minimal one, I might add, and then I bought a one-way ticket and I went to Milan and I started to work.
Right. And so did you know anybody there? Were you knocking on doors? Were you like, I'm just going to go to the best agent in Milan and I'm just going to work. That's the way it is. I'm just going to do it.
That's what I did. I bought a one-way ticket. I went straight from the airport to one of the numbers and one of the addresses that I had clipped out of a magazine and said, I'm here. And they said, well, who are you? And so, I was really lucky because they took me in and they found me a place to live within a few days. They cut my hair and I started to work. I had long hair like you. And they said, no, we're going to change that look up. They went very, very short and I started to work.
Right. And you haven't looked back. Well, that takes a
Sorry?
lot of balls. That takes, because I was offered when I was younger to go to Milan. Like I got into modeling late. So I was
Right.
offered at 26 or 20, was it maybe 24 or 25? And by that time, I just was like, I'm too old. I just,
Yeah.
now looking back, but at the time I was like, you know what? I didn't have it in me to go and
Yeah.
do that. I really, really didn't. It
You have
was
to really want
interesting.
it.
You
Yeah.
have to want it. So you wanted it. You wanted that
I
experience.
did. I wanted it, and there's a lot of work that goes into it.
Yeah.
It still does, even more so. So there are a lot, let's face it, there are a lot of beautiful girls, a lot of beautiful women out there. The woman who is out there modeling successfully is because, not because she's the most beautiful, but because she happens to really want it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. You have to
bottom
be
line,
motivated.
you should be
So,
motivated.
right. So how long did that last for you? How long were you in Europe modeling? Did you model all over the world? Did you come back home? Like how long did that career
So
last for you?
yeah, so I went back and forth, and
Oh,
I would base myself out of Milan. Sometimes I would be in Paris, Barcelona, Switzerland. So I did some traveling, and I would always come back to Toronto. All of that, and by the way, I ended up living in Hamburg for about 4 years as a base. And
right.
then by the time I was 28, I was aged out,
I
and
saw that. What a concept. You were aged out
right?
at
I was
28.
aged
Yeah.
out. And so I
Yeah.
decided to change tracks and start something else because that's what you had to do. And went on my merry way and worked and developed a great brand business wise from, being a landlord and having properties and so on and so forth. So it was only, I had this idea that I really missed being on the runway. It sounds really weird, but I always loved the runway. I was a showgirl.
Yeah.
And so, I really wanted to try that again. And I was really a little bit shy to do it. I thought, oh, what are you doing? What are you talking about, you old woman, you? What do you want on a runway? you
Right.
and
Right.
and then I remember circling around the agency. This was several years ago, and saying, you just have to go in there. Just go. Just go. They can just ask you to leave. What's the big deal
So
here?
hold on. You wouldn't even go in the door. So you were
No,
scared to walk through the
I was
door.
scared to walk through the door. And
Wow.
so, and it was like, the time was at 4 o'clock when they were shutting the door, and it's like 3:45, and I'm going, after circling for half an hour, I'm going, you have to go now.
Yeah.
You got to go now or forget about it. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm a successful businesswoman. So imagine what was going through my mind for me to actually feel like that.
Well, it's what we're told, by the way, Hanya. It's what we're told because our value, I mean, think about psychologically, if you're aging out at 28 and you're
Yes,
there roughly 35 years later and wanting to have this experience again, everything tells us, oh, you can't do this. You have no value. Your appearance is
exactly.
pretty much downhill after 30. So how dare you still exist? How dare you,
Yes,
you
yes.
know?
And so I ended up going through that door, and the rest is history. And my first job was walking runway, opening Fashion Week when we had Fashion Week, because I don't think we have it anymore here in Toronto. But
Right.
I worked Fashion Week, and it felt like I never left.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
And
bred in the
I love it.
bone.
Right to
Yeah.
this day, I love runway most.
So, because you are a showgirl, I can see that. So at 20, okay, so in your early 20s, the perks of beauty, what we can get away with. And then I'm just curious now, almost 40 years later, what the perks of that beauty are. Like, is it a huge discrepancy? Like, I mean, because you've obviously embraced it at this point in your life. So I'm wondering if it's a similar feeling, a different
So
feeling?
when you say the perks of beauty, what do you mean?
I mean, your appearance, like the confidence. I would assume, but maybe you didn't have as much confidence when you were younger about it. But I mean, beauty is sort of a God-given thing, and you have to maintain it. But
Right.
to be fast forward 40 years later and to have this incredible beauty and a career based on your appearance again, like
Okay.
almost 40 years later.
Yeah. Okay. So here's the thing I'm going to tell you about me. I've always been extremely confident, always.
Yeah,
And of course, as I've aged, that confidence is stronger because I have a lot more experience in life. I've always been an extremely authentic person. So I've always gone by the way that I felt was right and authentic to me. And so the perks of the beauty industry, I don't look at it like that, and I never do. I'm not that person.
Mm-hmm.
I'm simply the person who goes in. I come alive in front of a camera. I come alive on a runway. I love what I do, and it is for that short moment, and then I go on in my life.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not as though I run around feeling like, you know, this beautiful, these perks of beauty. I don't. I just don't look at myself that way. I work very hard at maintaining my weight, taking care of my skin, taking care of my insides more than anything.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very much a balancing act for me.
Well,
And
yeah, it's anchored in character. That's what I would think.
correct,
Yeah,
for
yeah,
sure.
yeah,
If you don't, yeah, that's a great way to put it, is
yeah.
anchored in character, more so
Because,
today than ever.
right. Because if you don't have that, because beauty is fleeting, it's going to ebb, it's going to flow, it's going to morph, it's going to take different manifestations. And if you
For
don't
sure.
have that solid component inside, like I say, I call the over 55 the curiosity landscape in life, because it's a period where I feel I'm learning more than I've ever learned. I feel like almost 12 years old in my curiosity and you know, what I want to learn and what I experience. And it's so easy to say no, and it's so easy to say yes. Like, I'm really loving this space, but all of it's an inside job at this point, right?
Yes.
Everything is an inside job that's going to be projected on the world if you're good inside.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't think that, I don't particularly think that the age is a part of that. I just think it's how you progress in your life. In other words, you know, if somebody would say, yeah, I've reached this age now where I can tell everybody just to get lost. Well, the idea is for me that I was always like that. It was never an age relevance. It was always a character relevance. And I always felt that way. So I know that there are a lot of women who say, well, I can just freely tell you to get lost or whatever it is today because I have the freedom to do so. Well, I always felt that I had that freedom. And
That's amazing.
I have always fought for women to have that freedom as well. The biggest reason why I am back doing what I do is really to encourage women to feel good about themselves. It's not really, of course, there's a little part of me that says, oh, how cool is that? I shot the Naples magazine cover. It's a big deal for me. But what's a much bigger deal is that, you know, when I walk through the streets of Naples, I have people coming up to me and saying, thank you. I have women our age who are saying, thank you for putting such a positive spin on aging. And you look amazing. And we want to know how you do it. That's important to me. That's much more important than anything else. That's why I'm doing it. It's not really for me. And there are days and there are times where I say, oh my God, I've had enough of the negative, because there's a lot of negative talk going on around, you know.
Yeah.
She's too old to be the run. I mean, there are designers in this town who will say, we can't book Hanya because she's too old. And let me tell you something. I'm better on the runway than most models. I know that. And
I believe it.
it's not because I'm bragging about it. I simply am. I know what I'm doing. It's what I love to do. And the fact that you're discriminating against me because you will turn around and say I'm too old is the very reason why I end up staying longer, even though I tell you, sometimes I just say it's time to wrap it up and go to southern France and enjoy my life.
I'll
Right?
join you. But I'm going to go, Italy is going to be my destination. But what is so fascinating about this is the demographics show it's women of a certain age who purchase, who buy. Like, why use 20-year-olds? I mean, I think it was 6 months ago, 80 for Brady with Jane Fonda, Sally Field, Diane Keaton. There was another one, top of the box office, Frankie and Grace, Andy McDowell, Helen Mirren, being the cover girls for L'Oreal. I mean, what are we missing here? Like, there's so much organic branding. If it really comes down to the bottom line, which is a dollar bill, like, it only makes sense to use women of a certain age because that's where the disposable income is. And I just don't get it. I don't get it.
I don't get it, but it is changing. So next week, I'm working for someone by the name of Brian Winston. He's booked me. I met with him yesterday, and I was so impressed with the discussion because he's booking me primarily because I'm representative of his client. He has a boutique in Palm Beach. He has a boutique here in Toronto, and he's booking me because that's who is buying his clothes. Of course, he has a younger section, but the bulk of his collection, I'm shooting with him. We need to have more of that. That has to happen.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost an obviosity.
Sense, right?
Yeah. And I was going through your TikToks, not that I'm obsessed and I'm not stalking you, so don't worry.
No.
Okay.
No.
But what was really interesting about your TikTok is the one that got the most hits was the one, I think the title was, I'm 67 years old. When you put your age out there and then people looked at it, were like, holy shit, my God. But it was that statement that brought the most people to check you out and take a look. And that's powerful. I think that's really powerful.
The one with the most hits at 1.5 million, which went viral, was me in a bikini.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea how hard that was for me to do that? First of all, to put a bikini on and to do whatever I was doing. But for me, it was important to do that, not because I want to show off, but because I can still do that. And I'm showing you that I'm trying to engage you in a conversation of feeling good about who you are and not hiding away because I'm actually 66, not 67.
Sorry about that. Excuse me. Sorry. Bad research. Bad.
I'll earn it. So, the point was really to make other women feel good. And the reality is that I would say to 80% was very positive in the feedback and 20% was a total shit show. They ripped me apart every which way. And that's okay. I mean, if I'm putting myself out there, that's going to happen. You know that, and I know that.
Oh,
but
listen.
That was big.
Yeah.
1.5 million hits.
That's incredible. I mean, listen, I've had a shit show for 20 years. If I actually went online and read this stuff about me, I would jump out my second floor window right now. I would just like, I mean, but I've got a good armor against it at the moment. Too. But from my podcast, I'm in a bikini. Have you seen the picture?
Yes, I love it.
Your bitches, and I from Indonesia in the summer. It's not touched. It's not anything. And I interviewed Jan Arden. She's Canadian too, who I love, and she said some really profound things. One of them was it takes a long time to become a person. So you had a good head start on it. For a lot of us, it's hard to become confident and as grounded. But I said, Jan, should I do like this thing in a bikini? She's like, abso-fucking-lutely. Of course. What have you got to lose? How can you care what anybody thinks at this point in your life?
It's an amazing shot. I loved it.
Yeah. And I'm like, I'm doing it.
I want to talk to her.
Yes.
I want to be with her.
Yes. I mean, and I
love it, I loved it.
Yeah.
And you looked amazing and you look amazing. So
thank you.
That confidence is what attracted me. That's why we're talking today.
Well, I mean, it's quid pro quid or quid pro, whatever that expression is that everybody talks about. But, I think that I read in an article, you were talking about, like, I guess the haters, you said, why all the hate? Like, why all of this vitriol? Like, what is that?
What is
I don't know. I don't get it.
Where's it coming from? The competitiveness amongst women, it's hard for me to understand it.
Yeah.
And I do feel it. I get a lot of hatred. And there is jealousy that happens along the way with friends. So you may know that in your own experiences, but the more visible you become, the more successful you become, all of a sudden there's like this push and pull amongst some friends. and girlfriends rather.
Mhm.
And what happens eventually is that you need to make the decision about going forward and releasing certain people because it's such a negativity. Um, if we are growing and you can't be happy for that growth, then you don't belong in that arena. You know,
Yeah.
it's so for me, I believe in finding people in a room who I can learn something from, something and bettering myself. I don't want to be surrounded by people who have negative energies around them, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's
And I find
quantum
that women do
physics.
that. And
Yeah.
not only women, you know, there's a lot of, I had a lot of comments from men, you know, oh, granny, oh, this, like, just so
Granny?
calling
Granny?
you granny, and I'll do you, granny.
Oh, thanks. That's going to be a good time for 2
You know,
minutes.
as if
Yeah.
it's is that your choice? You know, this idea that a lot of men, not all men, but a lot of men seem to think that they have still that choice. If I'm single, it's because I want to be single. It's because, thankfully, I am financially sound. I don't need anybody. And I worked hard at becoming that.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. I
that's
love
important.
that. I love that about you. Mike just told me it's quid pro quo. Thank you, Mike. Okay. That's kind of tit for tat. Yeah. 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 I've experienced that a lot in my life. And I talked to, a lot of my friends about this, and they've had the same thing. And I've said this, I always think if my friends are really happy and doing well, they're going to be way nicer to me. I think it's all a great thing. I think,
Yes,
again, I talked to Jeannie Becker about this too.
right.
We can all have our lane. It's
Yes.
all good,
It's all
like
good.
success is a horizon we can all share, in the spoils of it. And, this circles back to, I was also listening to you talk about, dating and character and all this stuff. So I have so many questions around this, but I love what you say about character versus personality. Like at this point in your life, if you're going to be with somebody, it's all about the character. Can you explain that a bit? I just thought it was wonderful the way you put that.
Yeah, for sure. I think um, at this stage in my life, I have created this amazing bubble that I live in, a very happy bubble. And let's pretend that that bubble is on an island. In order to cross that bridge to come to my island, you have to be already set as a man, because for me, it would be a man-woman relationship. So as the man, you have to be coming across that bridge with your big boy pants. You have to be emotionally evolved on my level, whatever my level is. And I'm not suggesting my level is so wherever. I'm suggesting that we be on the same level. And um, and I don't want somebody that I need to reconstruct. You know, so often you would hear women say, "Oh, it doesn't matter. You can do him over, make him over." And I'm thinking,
Waste of time.
"Are you?
Waste of
You're
time.
wasting your life, and you're
Yeah.
doing that. Enjoy your life, and perhaps someday you're going to meet somebody organically." I'm all about organic meetings. I'm not about dating apps. I'm not that person who's going to sit there swiping. I don't have the time to do that. And I don't have the character. For me, it's demeaning. I would sit there and I would feel, who are these people? I don't know them. And they're not crossing the bridge into my happy bubble, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And for me, it's character. So character for me is honesty, loyalty, kindness, humor. These are the pillars of what I think will be a successful mate for me. So if you're a bullshitter, I don't want you around. If I find you're bullshitting, the door's closed that fast.
Yeah.
So that's what keeps me happy. That's what keeps me sane. That's what keeps all of that away. And in order to cross that bridge, it doesn't just happen. There's a process, right? I'm
Yeah.
not 20 anymore. I'm at a time where whoever is going to be invited to share my life is somebody who is understanding of what my needs are, and I'm understanding of what his needs are. It's reciprocal. If it's
Right.
not reciprocal, it's not going to work.
It's reciprocity. It has to be.
Not
Um, So what about physically? Because I talk about this. I've been in a dating spree. I'm maybe kind of seeing somebody now, but I'm very physical. Like I love sex. I love connecting. Like, I think that keeps us young too.
For
So
sure.
how do you factor that in? I'm hanging on every word. Go. Because you're so
No.
beautiful and so confident. I'm sure, on every age spectrum that crosses your path by your bridge that you're speaking about. So
So
how
for
do you
me,
micromanage that one?
so sexuality for me is this.
I'm taking notes. Go.
I need to feel a great deal of friendship, and I need to feel that there's some kind of relationship forming before I engage in sex. That's me. So in my youth, I had plenty of sex, and a lot of it was whatever. Today, I'm much more selective and extremely discerning, because for me, sex is not just sex. Sex is lovemaking, is something extremely personal and
Yeah.
extremely private.
Yeah.
And that makes it a little bit harder
Yeah.
because, you know, a lot of guys, they're not looking for that. So
No.
that doesn't matter to me. For me, I'm not exposing myself unless I feel that there is something a little more sincere there. And what that means is that, um, I don't have sex all the time. No, that's true. So if I go without sex for a while, it is the way it is. I don't miss it because I'm not with somebody that I care to have sex with.
Right. It's connection.
It's
It's connection.
connection.
So do you have
Yes.
age requirements? Because men sure don't. I
Yes,
mean,
I do.
yeah.
I feel that age appropriateness is really important to me. Somebody 5 years younger, older. I was together with my husband, my daughter's father, for 28 years, and he was 6 years younger. So the emotional levels were there, so it didn't matter.
Mhm.
So certainly someone 5 years more or less younger, and no more than 5 years older. I don't want to be a mama, and I don't want to be a nurse. So I'm looking at the realistic um, realities of
Yeah.
relationships. I've dated guys who are 10 years older, and it's a whole different ballgame. They are in a different era, and
Yeah. They
we don't
are.
necessarily understand each other.
It's funny because in the last year, I've had a good dating spree. I told Mike, this man that I was madly in love with 2 years ago, this world-renowned photographer, the last text I got from him was like, I dream about you every night. And then I didn't hear from him for 2 years. Then I heard from him a couple of weeks ago. I told Mike this. He's pretending I wasn't heartbroken about this. Mike's the producer. But then we started texting again, and we just had this electric chemistry, this fire. And I wanted this man so badly. And we did it for a week, right? He was in London, and we're texting, and I'm like, oh my God. And then I'm sort of saying, well, the last time, and I haven't heard from you. And he went, no, it's a long story. And I was like, okay. So he said he'll tell me when it comes in LA, to LA. And then we went on another tangent. But anyway, now he's madly in love with another woman. So that circled. So I dealt with that. I'm really proud of how I dealt with that, because I took a day, and then I'm like, wait a second, that's not good. That's not good that happened. But in the spectrum of it, I did date somebody 10 years older.
Yes.
I dated somebody 12 years younger.
Yes.
And
And
well,
what did you find?
I found that the younger one was Italian and a good cook, and all that stuff, and lovely, just beautiful, beautiful man, and came over for dinner. And then we were talking, and I think I said something along the lines of, would you ever have kids? And he went, yeah, I'm still considering it. And I'm like, okay, that's the difference, right? Like it's just not,
Exactly.
even though I love his company, it's
Yes.
great. And then on the other end, I'm with you. Like 10 years older, it was like a different generation. Like,
Different generation.
right. Like they write like a speech, and their secretary types it. They don't even know how to use a computer. Like there really are generational things that are,
Yes.
right. And no,
100%.
I
Get
don't
my
want to
secretary
be.
to handle that. My
Yeah.
secretary is going to send you flowers. Well, perhaps you're going to have her spell my name properly next time.
Thank
I've
you.
only been dating you for 3 years. Maybe
Yeah.
she would get that right.
Yeah. Yeah. So
You
I'm
know?
like, yeah, and then as you said, like we've done the caregiving, we've done the mothering, like I don't want to.
No,
Not ready to do that yet. Not
I'm not going to
interested.
do that at all. So part of my being single now for quite some time is because I'm really enjoying my own company. It's self-care. It's my own self journey. My daughter's in a good position. There's money in the bank. I'm healthy. I'm attractive. Why do I need to tie myself down?
You
Unless
don't.
unless something amazing comes into my life, then I'm extremely happy with the amazing life I've created
By yourself,
by myself,
with yourself, for
with
yourself.
myself.
Right. With
And
yourself.
I have reconciled with the idea that I may be by myself for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
You know, that was a process. And once I settled into that thought, I was so happy with that. It's
Yeah.
like, what's wrong with this? This is
Yeah.
amazing. With great friends, I can travel, I can go anywhere I want. What's wrong with this? And nobody bugging me. I like waking up alone. Excuse me.
Me too. The few
Please.
times I woke up, I was like, oh my God, no, I don't want this. I don't. And I love, to your point, nobody bugging me, because I went to Rome for 2 months by myself in February and March. I just got up, left, didn't know the language, didn't know anybody.
You
And I
just went on
remember,
your own like that?
so I'm out of here.
I
I'm out of
love
here.
that.
Yeah. So
I'm gonna do that next. I love
oh,
it.
it changed everything. So I went and I'm in a 17th century building. Nuns are everywhere. They're filming a movie on Mussolini next door. I mean, it was the quintessential Rome. And I remember my second day there, I went to Campio di Fiore and I got my fresh flowers for my apartment. And then I said, I'm going to take myself out on a date. And I went to this restaurant and it wasn't open till 6, but they're Italian and they're men. So they opened it for me. And I
Beautiful
went
blonde.
in and put my book and my little notepad and a glass of wine and ordered like pasta, bread, and just sat there. And to your point, no one's bugging me. I don't have to make conversation. I'm not taking care of anybody at this point. This
Yes.
was like one of the most beautiful moments of my life. I
Yes.
was so happy.
Yes.
I'm alone, but I'm not lonely. I wasn't
Yes.
lonely, you know?
Yes. And at first, the process was I was lonely. And then, when COVID came, that was the last 3 years is the first time in my life where I have been without a constant man in my life. From the time that I'm 15, I've had
Right.
boyfriends and husbands and whatever. The reality is the last 3 years were a lesson for me. And they were the best lessons of my life because at first I had to understand myself. I had to have a look at my track record and my life all on my own. You have to have, you need to come clean with yourself because there's nobody else to come clean with. And in that period, I learned to actually like myself. And I understood everything that we've talked about together today. And what I understood was that, yes, maybe someday, but it has to be like this and like that. And not to feel that I needed to have a man in my life because I don't feel that. It's
Yeah.
not necessary.
Yeah. I don't feel that way either. I feel, but I feel that it would be a really good experience for me if it aligned up and I had a chance to discover myself in a healthy relationship. That
Right.
does interest me.
Yes.
And it's funny because I went out for lunch yesterday with my best friend. He's 93. And he's got
Love that.
a new girlfriend, and he's moved in with her. She's 88. And, he tells me about his sex life,
Ah,
everything. He's
I
just
love that.
wonderful. He's,
There's California for you.
yeah. And he's an old actor. He did vaudeville. He worked for Mel Brooks. I mean, he's just the most fascinating man. So we're kind of best friends. And I told him what I'm doing. And well, first of all, I showed him your picture and he's like, what the hell? He was like, oh my God. He said, you know what he said? He said, that's a dame. That's a dame. He said, that's a woman. I said, yeah, I get to interview her tomorrow. But he was talking about this at 93 years old. And he said, look, He said, if it's not organic, your relationship, if it's not, I want to spend time with you, I want to spend time with you. If it's not on that path without expectations and some grand plan, he said, I've lived my whole life that way. And that's how it happens. And he said, please let it happen that way. Don't force anything.
Exactly.
Don't obsess about these men. Like, just let it unroll.
Or
and he
not.
knows. Or not.
Or
Or
not.
not.
I know, that's exactly how I feel. I don't push it. Here's what I believe. Whatever's meant to be will not pass you by. So I actually really believe that. I live my life that way. So if you actually live your life that way, it truly alleviates any kind of stressors. Because if you can actually believe that, then you understand that you need to live in this moment. And whatever this moment is, whether it's good or bad, you're meant to be going through this.
It's everything. That's everything. Yeah.
So
yeah.
with understanding that, you relax. You give yourself the space because you're relaxing into that moment. And by creating that space within yourself is when you grow. You take that negative out.
Yeah.
It's about also loving yourself. And it's the same thing with relationships, whether it be you and I friends or a lover and myself. If you give that person the freedom to just breathe and do whatever it is they want to do, and you do the same, don't bring in anything from the past. Just live in this moment, in the freedom of that moment. What's going to naturally happen is a love, because you've given it the space to breathe. You've given the other person that ability to just be. And by being is when you actually start to really love. So when you can get all of these things going in your mind is when you can start to relax into who you are at 66, at 93, whatever that could be.
Yeah.
Friend, he's got it worked out. Don't put pressure on yourself.
Yeah.
It's
You can't.
exactly what I'm saying.
You can't control the universe, and it's coming from a place of scarcity. Have you read The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer? Okay.
No.
Okay, you have to read it because
yes.
This is everything he talks about. He's like, the garbage we bring with us. He said, imagine you're just taking this garbage everywhere and all our traumas in our DNA. So when a car cuts you off in traffic, you go ballistic, you pull out your gun because all this unresolved stuff you haven't dealt with, and you're hanging on to the past and you're anxious about the future. And he says this, you're so on it about this. He said, breathe in, relax into the moment.
Relax into it.
It's going to pass. The pain's going to pass. The joy is going to pass.
Yes. Yeah. And think back in your own life. This is the beauty of getting older, is that, of course, when we were younger, we didn't have the experience of life. And when the shit hit the fan, whatever the case might have been in our youth, we all had shit. And when it got really bad, because you didn't have the experience to really deal with it, you would freak out internally, stress, not sleep, whatever the case might be, right?
Yeah.
But as we age, the reality is simply that no matter what I go through, and I've got a lot of stuff going on right now, and some of it is extremely negative as a businesswoman, not in modeling, but as a landlord. The reality is this: I've been there, I've done it, I've won. I'll get through it this time. Even if I don't win, I know that I have the wherewithal to get through it. So relax. And that's what happens.
Well, that's a conscious choice. And so the other thing about like this whole way of thinking, which I love, which is very new to me, is you're not a victim. You can't victimize yourself. Correct. Every choice that this is just what I believe, every choice that you've made in life, like even the family you're born into and what you learn on this earth is a choice, and you're here to learn a lesson. Yes. And it's a hard lesson to learn this stuff. It's not easy. It's painful. Like you have to not readjust, but a lot of stuff you believed in, sort of just falls by the wayside because you've held on to it for so long and it doesn't serve you anymore. So last night I was at a dinner party with a bunch of new people, and I was just making immature jokes with some people at the table. I could go into more detail, but I was, right? And this woman was like, oh, this is the most distasteful conversation I have ever heard. And I have
Next
to
time,
leave.
bring me. I love
Yeah.
those.
I have to leave the table. And I look across the table and I thank God I made some new friends. I'm like, oh my God. And then she came back and said, I just didn't want to say anything. And so my old self would be, I would go at it. And I was just like, cool. Truthfully, I mean, have your opinion. It's great, but I think I'm loving my opinion more. So I'm just going to stick with this, And a couple of the guests and I went outside and sat around the fire and, immature humor, repeating the same joke again and again and again and laughing and having the best evening. But before, that would have thrown me because she thinks different than I am. And, the confrontation and I'm like, what am I even doing? Wasting my energy caring what she thinks.
Exactly.
You don't like me. She's not going to like
you don't like me. You're not going to like me in 5 minutes either. So
yeah, it's not going to happen.
Not
Yeah.
everybody's going to like me.
And no anxiety, because I think as women,
Yes.
we want people to like us. We want to, and that's
Yes.
an age-old problem.
That's an age-old problem. Oh my goodness.
The good girl.
Wow.
We have to be
Good
perfect.
girl. Oh,
Yeah.
yes. And as women, I think probably one of the biggest things that really, as somebody who is really all about justice, I hope in my lifetime that I get to see more of an equality between men and women. I don't know that that's going to happen. It has been not that way this entire life of mine, where men are in charge and men are in control. Is it getting better? Yes and no. I mean, we're starting to see more of a pushback, but this is something that is for me very difficult to absorb.
Yeah.
There's inequality always. And certainly when I was in construction and development, and just the comments as an attractive girl, a woman at that time, stemming from then. And then, of course, all throughout my life, men seem to think that they have that power over us, and they do. So, and I'm certainly not going to be some kind of a man basher. I'm simply hoping that in my lifetime, that as a woman, we see more equality, right?
Well, yeah, we were talking a bit about this last night, but to your first point, I have a friend who is one of the most powerful women in Hollywood and plays with the biggest boys. And she said to me, glass ceiling, I don't care what they're saying. No way. I can't believe when I walk in a room and it's a boys club. And meanwhile, I brought in the biggest deal, the universe. And
especially
I'm
Hollywood.
Oh, I said, really? I thought it was way better. She said, no, it's not. No, it's horrible.
Did you see the Netflix, that Gina Davis was, what was the name of it? It was all about Hollywood and, how producers and writers, females, were just discriminated against. And, she gave all the statistics about.
Yeah, she's got a gender study program, which is really fascinating.
Fascinating.
I actually met her one day. She's Mensa. She's so smart. And I was at the grocery store and she's like 6'2". And I to get something off the shelf. I'm only 5'9". She was 6'2", and she got it for me. And I was like, wait a second. And I had a chat with her, and she was as lovely as you think she would be, and unassuming and wonderful. But she's very into that, and totally. But another interesting thing you should check out Scott Galloway. And he talks about the emasculation of men right now, and young men not having any social skills because of the dating apps and social media. And we're actually bringing up men who connect even less than the generation before. The men are getting it too. And he's like, my advice to men, especially young boys, go out somewhere, talk to a woman, get some game. Have interaction, be vulnerable. We have to be vulnerable to have these relationships.
For sure. That's interesting.
Sure. He's right on it.
The younger guys were a little bit more open.
No, they're not even having sex. Wow. They're not even having sex because they're scared of connection. So God, we have to get out there. You and I have to get out there.
Yes.
And start educating.
Start this.
Yes. I've so loved talking to you. I do have a final question for you. I mean, you're just maybe, I said to Jan Arden said she would check in with me on Senior Bitches. So maybe we'll do a check-in with you to see where you're at, because I think you're such an inspiration on the outside and the inside. So the thing I have, it's two-parter. What is the thing that surprised you most about aging? And what is your current motto? And has it changed?
Oh, that's great. So my current motto, we'll start with
I'm writing it down again. Go.
that. It has not changed. My motto in life has been, just go do it. That's it.
Yeah.
Nothing has changed. From the time when I was so young with a one-way ticket, just go do it. Whatever happens, happens. Go for it. So
I love it.
That is still my motto. That would be my motto on my gravestone. And what was the first question? What's
the
most surprising thing to me is that at this stage in my life, I'm alone. I did not expect to be alone at this stage.
Me too.
I thought married to the end and going to the sunset with my husband. That's what I thought. Broke my heart. It didn't happen. That's the most surprising. And when I lay in bed, sometimes at 4 o'clock in the morning, I lay there and I say, how the fuck did this happen?
I do that too.
Right? And I'm looking at my ceiling. I'm going, fuck, how did this happen to me?
Where did this go? What something happened?
Here.
Yeah.
And then, the ball gets rolling and I go, oh yeah, okay, that's right. That was your decision. You left him. So then, my sanity comes back. But, that's the biggest surprise to me.
That's natural. It's natural. So. And it is surprising.
I'll write that down from you.
Because it's like, we have these attributes and anyway, a lot to give and share with the right person. And, I sleep on my side of the bed. I don't sleep in the middle. And and I do sometimes go, really? Single? Well, okay, then I go, okay, it's your choice. It is your choice. Yes. It is your choice. But like you, I'm not gonna lower the bridge for anybody who's not fabulous anymore. So I'm like, I take responsibility for that. Yeah. So that is so fascinating. Well, I want to keep checking in and see if that scenario changes.
Yeah, no, for sure. We'll for sure check in. It was so great to meet you and have this conversation.
It was lovely to meet you. So thank you so much for joining us on Senior Bitches.
Pleasure. Yeah.
Bye.
Next time.
Bye-bye.